going to say anything more about it than that. He is creative director at Salesforce. Please give a big round, and don't forget the hashtag, get your questions in. Big round of applause for Robert Fransgaard.
Hello, is this working? Yeah. Okay, let's see. Is B in the room? I know that she was heading in earlier. Can you please come up on stage, please? I know you sort of rushed in directly from London, but I kind of need you for the next slide. So you sent this tweet out about dancing. Are you ready?
What are we doing, the running
We're dancing.
It was a teenage wedding and the old folks wished him well. You could see that Pierre did truly love the mademoiselle. And now the young monsieur and madame have rung the chapel bell.
So I kind of felt I should do something that at least would please one person in the audience, because this is going to be a bit of a weird talk. And it doesn't have anything to do with my presentation, really. And actually, that's a lie. It does have something to do with my presentation. I'll cover that at the end of it. The lights are really bright, so I can't see you, but I assume you're still there somewhere. So as was said earlier, I'm the creative director for Salesforce Customer Experience Design in Europe. So I'm starting up this team, and I've been running it for 6 months now. I don't know how many knows what Salesforce is here, out of interest. Yeah. So Salesforce is the most innovative company in the world, according to Forbes, which is a bit of an interesting slide to always put up, because for us internally, it's quite a humbling slide to put up, but it seems really pretentious when you put it up. But it's a cool title to have. We're essentially a software company, a cloud-based software company. We've been running for 15 years, and what we create is essentially the customer success platform, which allows companies to be customer-centric, so between sales, services, marketing, and all that. I don't have anything to do with that, by the way, so my team essentially do this kind of work. So every time Salesforce implementations need to look different, needs to look branded or customized, that's where we come in, basically where it has to look nothing like the Salesforce software. But that's not what I'm going to talk to you about today. So what I'm going to talk about is something I've been thinking about since 2006, actually. And today it's still relevant in my head. But it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I've talked to a few people about it, never to a large audience like this. So if you have any questions on this, then please do tweet them or catch me later. It started essentially when I was interviewing for some designers at a marketing agency where I was running the creative team. And I had one person coming in saying that. And it wasn't in any arrogant way or whatsoever. He generally felt that the internet was growing up. It had slowed down. He had been in the business for so long that he knew everything there was to know about websites, banner advertising, and emails, and all that good stuff. I asked him what he thought about this new thing called Facebook that was out at the moment, and he generally asked, what's a Facebook? And it's easy to sort of make fun of that now, but fundamentally, I think there's a notion at that point in time that the industry had kind of grown up, and it hasn't. We are swimming along as experienced designers, we are happy with it, and then something just surfaces at some point, eating us up if we don't keep track of the internet, because it's a wild beast. It is moving very fast. And we as an industry it's a very young industry. None of us can say our granddad did a website or great-granddad did a website at some point in time. It's not there. We are still an industry growing up. We are not mature. We might have the educations, we might have the memberships, the nice conferences and all of that, but we are a very young industry. So I've been thinking a lot about what we can learn from other industries. And I've brought essentially 7 quick examples to cover some of the things I've been thinking about. Some of these things are picked up back when the question first arose in my head. Some of them are fairly new. But let's go through them and see what do you think about these. So the first one is typography, which is something that hopefully a lot of you will recognize. How many here genuinely consider typography when you're doing design, information architecture, user experience, any of that? Okay, that's good. That's better when I've asked years ago at other sort of events, which is good, because there's lots to learn from typography. It's been around for a long time. And it's one of those things that has some established rules, that is very important for digital because it is harder to read on screen than it is on paper. I won't linger too much on that, but I love the fact that you can learn from the typography elements of how to structure and set type, but also for things like newspapers, how to structure information in information hierarchy. For information architects, that's quite an important thing to be able to highlight the right piece of content, even though it might not be textual content. And the benefits, there are lots of benefits. I've highlighted a few of them that I'm aware of here. Things like it is harder to read on screen. Good typography gives a sort of pleasure, essentially. And then this last one that I found out about a week ago, that Princeton University has proven that if you have a typography that's harder to read, it makes the content easier to remember. I don't really understand the logic of that one, but they've done a study on that one. I haven't looked deeper into it, but I think that's an interesting one. It just shows that there are constantly movements, even in an established industry like typography. So moving a bit away from our comfort zone, move into more idea generation and workshop methodologies, which again has been around for quite a long time. So one of the things is, how many know Thinker Toys, the book, out of interest? Okay, that's a very good book in terms of creating different types of idea generations, methodologies, and tool sets for it. One of them is called a lotus flower, where you basically write your key idea in the center, and then you write some additional ideas that are relevant to that out, and then you take those out and you write 8 again. But I was thinking about how does that work if you apply it to an experience design sort of methodology? So in this case, find a product. Let's see, navigation would be one way, on-site banner, search, you've got suggested product links, sitemap, and it actually gets harder and harder and harder when you're filling these ones out. So by the end, when I was doing this, because I wanted it to be kind of realistic, I ended up with the last one was a mistake. I found a product by mistake, which still fits the original idea for that one. If you pull that one out, the mistakes, what would that be then? Things like, are you looking for? Easy way back, clear product description. And again, it forces you to think about the different routes in and out of different elements of an experience design. And there are lots more for that one. Another one is these ones. Again, is from this one. We're taking a step back now to 1970 for lateral thinking by De Bono. Some of the key elements he had was remove a key assumption, fractionation, try the opposite and change the viewpoint. What would that look like in experience design? Well, remove a key assumption. Speed is important to users. Well, what would that experience look like if it wasn't? It might be in reality, but let's think about what it would look like if it wasn't. Another one is fractionation. Contact form becomes contact and form. What could contact mean then when it's not a form necessarily? Try the opposite, looking for a product. Well, the product finds me instead. And change the viewpoint. How does the app see the experience they're going through? So it's just a way of shifting the mindset from probably more of our comfort zone and that kind of funnel into the final product. Another one is this 5 whys. I don't know if any of you know that one, but that's from the 1930s and was picked up by Toyota Industries. It's basically trying to find the root cause of different problems. So you ask why 5 times. So what would that look like? Users leave the site without buying a product. Why? Well, they can't find the right product. Why? Because the navigation isn't working for them. But why? Because they don't recognize the categories that the products are under. Why? Because they don't know what category the product is under. They are only interested in the individual product. So some of this you can back up with user research, but maybe the user research only took you down 3 steps. So it's handy to ask the other questions just to find out, is there a deeper cause that we can fix at a more deeper level? And that goes for internal sites as well. So employees are not using an asset management system. Why? Well, they use Dropbox, right? They say the asset management system is slow to use. Why do they say that? Because it's complicated. Why? Because it takes too long to complete the required fields they need to put in. Why? Because they actually don't know what the fields are, so they need to find out. And that one is actually a real example, by the way. Taking an even further step back, this is one of the first one I actually thought about when I started thinking about this, is how can you apply something like an assembly line to experience design? Well, the assembly line, as you probably know from the old Ford thing, was put on some wheels, you put on some chassis, you put on some doors, you put on a roof, and you got some cars. Well, what I see is more often than not when people are doing designs, or wireframes for that matter, is they do it this way. So they complete a wireframe, then they complete 2 wireframes, then 3, then 4. Which is great. You still end up with 4 cars, but you also end up with, you might having to change stuff from the first car on the other ones because things have evolved as you're designing it. And if you're under time pressure, this is actually where I started using this, was when I worked for a site that did really quick and cheap websites. is that if you do it that way, when you reach number 3 and you have to deliver it, well, you still have cars, they might not have the roof. But if you do it that way, you might end up with missing key elements of the journey. Military, I was thinking about this one as well. This is one I haven't used, but I kind of want to use at some point. It's utility belts. How you have all these different elements as a soldier you put on your belt, they all work together, they all create what you need at a given point in time. What if you can do that for users as well? So one example is, I have a laptop, I have an iPad, I have a phone. When I get a calendar invite, they pop up on all 3, so I have to go, okay. What if those 3 things were just connected? So I only get it on one of them when they're nearby. It would just make my life a whole lot easier, especially since my things aren't synchronized, so they come up with like a minute's variation, which is annoying. Or this one, I talked to a guy at UX Lisbon this year who was doing this kind of work. He was basically doing interfaces for fighter jets. And he said some of the things that they're looking at is the faster the fighter jets go, the less option you want, because then you're in a critical situation where you only need some very, very key things to deal with. You don't really care about whether you're running out of fuel. You're probably more worried about being shut down. How could that work with just experience for general people? What if I'm moving around with my iPhone, right, or my Android? I'm just walking around. As soon as I walk faster, I move faster, the buttons get bigger so I can hit them better. I don't know if that's even a use case, but it starts thinking about things in a different way. And this one, Art of War, which is a good book that, how many have read Art of War or have it lying around? So again, okay, that's a good one to read. So again, this is all the way back from 500 before Christ that this Chinese warlord wrote all these rules for how to do war. And it's pretty much how all business people are working these days. But here I've highlighted a couple of them. Attack him when he's unprepared and appear when you're not expected. What does that mean, experience design? Well, surprise and delight. It could be the Gmail one. I'm writing attach in an email. It says, did you want to attach something? I didn't expect that, but that's handy. Well, now I expect it because now I'm used to it, but you get the idea. The other one, in war, let the great object be the victory, not lengthy campaigns, right? For that one, focus on short opportunities you have with customers. I think often when we do big customer experience map, we assume that our products is everything that's on the customer's mind. It really isn't. It might be 30-second decisions they're making, so focus on making those key moments great, rather than thinking about doing that whole customer life cycle. Yes, it's important, but really you want to focus on what they need here and now more than anything else. And now we're probably back to something that's more recognizable, storytelling. And there's a couple of slides I want to show here. There's this one, the hero's journey. I found that this one is helpful to structure more of that kind of custom experience, that user experience, if you only know part of it. So you can start mapping things onto different stages of it and saying, well, these are based on histories and stories that's gone on for thousands of years. So this represents many things, how we do things in life. Maybe it also represents how my shopping journey is going through this site. So if I know key stages of these ones already, how can I then assume what the other stages might be? There's a simpler version of it, which is this one, the narrative arc. So you have a beginning, a middle, and end, and this is fundamental to most storytelling throughout history. So it has the same elements. There is a stasis when nothing has happened. Then there's something that triggers the customer into action. Then they go on a quest to find what will solve this particular problem. There's a surprise. They always run into some kind of problem. We try to minimize it, but there's always something. There's always a surprise of some sort. It could be a competitor. It could be lack of 3G. It could be a lot of things. Critical choice, at what point in time do they actually choose our product over another competitor's product? And so on and so forth. There's a climax where they make a decision, either to buy a house or not. And then what does that mean to their life after they purchased that product or used our service? How did that change from the stasis? And films, there's lots to learn from films, and to some extent, David actually talked about this with personas earlier, so I'll try not to cover the same thing again, but this is a real example I've used fairly recently, where we did a workshop for an internal system. And one of the participants we interviewed called the system administrator Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we picked up on that and we thought, that's interesting, so if he's the Obi-Wan Kenobi, what are the other users of the system? Who are they in Star Wars? And I've genericized it a bit here, but some of them, so Luke Skywalker could be a junior employee who really wants to do it right, but he kind of needs a bit of coaching, otherwise he's going to end up with some bad practices. Leia could be the VP who uses it very infrequently. She doesn't use it that often. But when she does it right. She knows how to do it properly. She knows she has to use the system. She might need a bit of guidance about being a bit more hands-on. Han Solo is an interesting one because he's the kind of employee who always gets the job done. Whether he uses the system or he uses something else, doesn't matter. His focus is the end result. Now, one of the surprising things that we got out of this worked really well in the workshop, by the way, in terms of getting everybody to think where the different employees were in terms of each other. Well, how it also worked was that this became for the workshop only. It's not a persona that kind of lingers on afterwards and is really sort of sticky and you can't get away from it and it keeps backfiring. It was a tool for the workshop to help understand what are the different things that people want to get out of the system. How do they work between themselves? And so on and so forth. And it was quite a helpful one. I've only used this one once with a caveat, but I do want to use it again because this seemed to work well for us anyway. What was interesting was that Paul, who kind of triggered this whole thing, had not seen Star Wars, so we had to explain that to him. But other than that, it was good. We didn't get into who Darth Vader would have been, but that I want to pick up next time I use something like this, because that would have been interesting to see who the protagonists were. And then we're back to music, essentially. So there won't be any more dancing, by the way. When Rob first asked me to... Where's Rob? Oh, I can't see anyway. When he first asked me to come and speak here about something random, this slide was probably the first one I thought of in terms of this whole what can we learn from other industries. It's also kind of the slide I've had most problems with. Because music to me is something that's kind of magical and mystical. It's something that I don't know anything about. I don't play an instrument. I don't know how to read music notes. If I sing karaoke, it's something that brings people together against me. But there's lots of stuff in music that helps me in my daily lives. So I listen to music when I run to keep sort of pace, which is a slow pace in my case. I listen to music when I work. Depending on what I need to do, I listen to different things. Complex jazz or crazy Japanese techno if I need to come up with ideas, and so on and so forth. But I've also tried to harness music in a way to learn a bit more about how to use it a bit better to structure how your team is working. So one way I've used it is for pitches, where I've come up with this idea I've been using it for a good 4 or 5 years now, having a pitch tune. So what it does is when you have your pitch team together, everybody's a bit sort of hyped up and stressed about it. But if everybody sort of talk about what should the pitch tune be for this pitch, it gets everybody to think about something different and just get them relaxing a bit. But it also means when you go into a pitch, everybody seems to have the same music in their head, which means that the people who are really hyper, they calm down a bit. People who might be a bit more shy, you can lift them up a bit. So when you go in, it feels like you're a team that are talking. And that I found working really nicely. But I'd love to hear what people think about using music as experience design, because as I said, I don't have any background in it. And for me, it is one of those things that I don't really feel I can say anything sort of professionally about. So with that, that's my presentation. So thank you very much for listening.